Mitakiapi, Makasi Tomni Omaniwi, Imachiapi Kishto, Chante Washtea, Nape Chusape Kishto. I'm really honored to be here, and I want to introduce you to a dear friend of mine from the Southern Cheyenne tribe, Rick West. And Rick was the very first director of the National Museum of the American Indian. And many of us came through the grand procession, I don't know how long ago it was now, but there was over 500 nations from all over the country, and that grand entry took about 3 hours. So we did that tonight coming into the Kennedy Center and honored our flags with the song from my brother, Waylon Gaddy. So I'm gonna introduce Rick here. He's retired from the Autry Center, and he's a part of the Cheyenne Chiefs. Plamaya.
Good evening. As we gather on the banks of the Potomac, or rather the Patawamek River, for this amazing event, We the Peoples Before, we acknowledge that we are on the ancestral territory of the Nacotchtank peoples, from which the name Anacostan was derived, the original peoples of what is now the nation's capital and the surrounding area. Long before the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts stood on this site, this river, along with the Anacostia River to the south, served as the main river for travel routes, trading centers, and meeting places among coastal and interior tribes. There is evidence that a large town likely stood directly across from where you are sitting tonight. We also acknowledge that this area was and still is home to many native nations, including the Piscataway, Pamunkey, Nanachoke, Mattaponi, Rappahannock, and many others. The people of these native nations have a vibrant, living culture, a set of them, and run contemporary governments. We recognize and honor their past, present, and futures, as well as their abiding relationship to these precious lands. We may not know it now or remember today, but the rivers, towns, roadways, mountains, landscapes, and other sites carry the original names of our people and their spirits. Though I am Indigenous, like most, if not all of you, I am a visitor and a guest on these lands. Tonight's performance and tomorrow's events will help to educate us to be in good relationship, or as we often say, be a good relative with the first peoples of the lands around you right now. And that specific description of who sat here historically is important for us all to think about tonight, because it is metaphor or symbol for three very important thoughts that have always motivated me in my personal life as a citizen of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes, as a member of the Society of Southern Cheyenne Peace Chiefs, as the founding director of the National Museum of the American Indian. And those three propositions are these. We have been here for the millennia. We are still here in the present, and we will insist on remaining for the future. And now let me conclude my allusion to that proposition by invoking the words of an artist. And it's a favorite poem of mine by Salmon Ortiz, the poet and storyteller from Acoma, who once has always been very much in the center of American Indian arts. And he spoke eloquently in a poem, a very brief one, about his own quest for identity and continuing identity and sustainability as a member of a Native community. It's a short poem entitled, "It Doesn't End, of Course," and here were his words. "It doesn't end, of course, in all growing from all earth to all skies, in all touching all things, in all soothing the aches of all years. It doesn't end." Simon was speaking of his own personal identity, but he could have been speaking for all Native peoples in the United States, both in the lower 48 and also in Hawaii, where our Native brothers and sisters live in Hawaii. And what is most important, I think, tonight for us to remember in this event, in this program, is that we all have a stake in affirming the identity, first of all, of Sangat Ortiz, of course, but collectively of all Native people. I will not be satisfied, ever, unless all in this room and those whom you represent, Native or non-Native, understand the importance, the power, and the centrality of that affirmation of Native identity, and a recognition, once and for all, that Native peoples past, present, and future continue to represent a defining thread of that great cultural tapestry we call the United States.
I was born and raised on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and I'm Oglala Lakota, and I'm really honored to be here. And I just want to share our journey to the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, which began nearly 10 years ago when we had a vision of our own Kennedy Center honors. 3 years ago, we learned that our dear friend, Mark Bamuthi Joseph, spoken word poet and playwright, joined the Kennedy Center as the first person to lead their new social impact initiatives at the New Reach. Coincidentally, the Kennedy Center was celebrating their 50th and FPF our 25th. With John F. Kennedy's history with tribal leaders and American Indian nations, the location feels like the stars have aligned. And here we are tonight. We are here to tell our story, as it should be, told through our lens, from our hearts, and from a place of resilience and love, deep love for our ancestral homelands and territories. I want to just take a moment to personally uplift our director, Roberta Uno. I would like to thank our design team. I'd like to thank the production team. I'd like to thank all of those that contributed to telling our story. The nearly 50 artists you will see, my relatives to my right who have traveled this road with First Peoples Fund. I'm so honored to see them sitting over there, our Community Spirit Award honorees, Wade Fernandez and Eula Lee Pudafe. And I want to say that these 50 artists who made it possible, who gave everything to this event, despite from the many challenges through this pandemic. Lila Wopila Tanka. And I must say that this performance contains adult language, descriptions of historic violence, fog, haze, strobe, and loud sounds. Also humor, beauty, and love. Taya Yahipi, Plamaya.
Hey, Autumn. Hey, Autumn. Big Curry. What's up?
Wingapo.
Hauka Menuea.
How? Happy Wash Day.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hami Takuyepi, Dayawa Chiankapi.
Who's you, Arlene?
Inyach Kenny Ramos, Wichihi. Inyan Yue, Wichihi, Benegas, Napun Welch, Questionmark Barona, Indian Reservation, Kupai.
Adam White Eyes and Machiapi, Na La Komi Chaje Ki, Wambli Ohitikawi, Wazi Ahaha and Mataha, Chante Washte Na Pe Chizapi Extra, Dayaya Hippie.
When to go in this nakas, Mangin and Dodam, Boys Fort and Dunjaba.
Wakia Wash Akahemie, na Washitria, Nathan Berglund and Machiapi. Ambetukile, Mi Chante Waste na Pe Chiuzapi.
I'm Carlton Turner. I'm from Mississippi, the land of the Great River.
Nuedi, Nuegambi, Anuga Monique, Olo Nadili, Olo Edidili, Ganosokta, An Kunadule, Renapewa,
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for joining us.
We are here to share stories.
Some of these stories are our stories.
And some are the stories of our relatives.
Our relatives to the east
And to the west.
We will share stories from the South.
From the north,
And the sky.
And from the earth,
We will share stories from poets.
dancers,
weavers,
Potters.
lawyers and water protectors.
DJs and spoken word artists.
some of the stories we will share come from you, our relations.
They have been passed down for generations.
from our grandparents,
And their grandparents.
And their grandparents' grandparents.
Close your eyes.
Think of your ancestors.
They're here with us.
They guide us.
Through all of the different directions we walk.
So come and walk with us tonight.
a journey through stories.
Join us on this journey.
But first, we will need your undivided attention.
So take a moment and turn off all smartphones.
And join us on this journey.
Welcome
to
We the Peoples Before. We begin in the east.
We're the Passamaquoddy, we're the first.
The first to see the sunrise.
The first to see the colonists wash up on our shores.
We begin with Wabanaki.
We begin with the people of the dawn.
This is a story the first light remembers.
My grandma used to always say,
Tikesh kichichituan tamakushipechi kuchichitun staniliayin.
if you know where you've been, you'll know where you're going. My people, the Wabanaki, we've been here for thousands of years, since time immemorial, since before the glaciers carved out our home and the lake I grew up playing on, and Menominee, our sacred island where so many of our relatives are buried. She would always say,
You come into this world in a basket, and you leave carrying a basket.
I grew up watching Grandma make baskets. I'd wake up to the sound of her pounding ash outside my window. It was like the sound of music. For my people, the ash tree is significant.
It's what gave us life.
We come from the ash tree. We emerged from it.
At first, there were no Indians here in this land next to the sunrise. But then, Glooskap took his bow and arrow and shot at the trees. He hit an ash tree, and suddenly, our people emerged from its bark, singing and dancing. We've been singing and dancing ever since.
Last year we lost Grandma. It was like one day she got sick, and then suddenly the person who taught me everything I know was gone. But I still have her stories, and her baskets, and our language. She was one of the last fluent speakers in our entire nation.
te open and oya yo te open and oya. Squaw say weag gilun. Kisi petiptunia yud liwitazu wax cylinder ki dak mi gomen. Biche. We are the first indigenous people of the world to be recorded in 1890. Nuduag de dulna bemug edlinto titit naga edliag nud maula titit kane al linto agano. I could hear my relatives speaking in these wax cylinders. These are my relatives. They're singing old, archaic songs. Squash yutol nudum. Nuduada nukmus edle westag. Edlin dag. Edli agnud muwinnigut. Edutemi, squash your nil nodum. I could hear my grandmother speaking in these wax cylinders. I wept the very first time I heard them. You'd link to wagon. Anjima chined zogum. This song is about a passing of a chief. Nagagadwaga kimanen yuktug, which qui majeko tited, yud lint to wagano, nagayotol, agano de magano. And we are going to teach these songs and stories from one generation to the other.
Gakinen.
Skijinowado.
Skijinawug gilun.
Skijinawug gilun.
Skijinawug gilun.
Aha. Need.
Dihin. I got it.
Aha. Edgy Gukmus. Balida Humusk.
Grandma would be proud.
Tikej, kuchichi tuon tama kuchipechi, kuchichi tuon staneliain.
If you know where you've been, you'll know where you're going.
This is a story the first light remembers.
We are the people of the dawn.
Chkuabnig Gilun.
What if people today followed that first song from the first peoples?
Mauluk Hadine. Let's all work together.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? And the concussion grenades, red glare, water cannons bursting in freezing air, rubber bullets shot at water protectors gave proof through the night that America is still spelled with 3 Ks.
America, a word that salutes settler colonialism, ism, a dangerous definition, the doctrine of discovery buried in the highest court of the land.
Supremacy of the free, home of the braves who became animals upon discovery.
But you cannot discover a people who already existed.
And you cannot find something that was never lost.
They always called me American. And so I said to them, can you show me America?
Can you tell me where it is?
I have been looking for the reason why my people had to die.
When history is written by the colonizer, they are always the heroes. We created Columbus Day when Columbus is documented to say Taino people would make excellent slaves.
Hitler studied American concentration camps designed for the Dene because they were so effective in stripping their humanity away.
The long walk. Even an Indigenous Holocaust couldn't get us written about in history books. Our numbers are not tattooed on arms. They're buried in unmarked graves of Indian boarding schools where they pried our mouths open into singing anthems of freedom in English.
Don't tell me to get over it when people still forget we exist and our hero is still printed on the $20 bill, honoring a man who ordered the death march of 15,000 Cherokee.
The Trail of Tears. What do those stars and stripes represent in a country built on the backs of stolen black and brown bodies? And they're stealing our children today. That's a fact.
Like white families in Texas working to overturn the Indian Child Welfare Act.
And the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air.
And the truth is, I should not hate fireworks on the 4th of July.
I should not hate dead men on paper money.
And I should not hate. So let me tell you that I love you.
We all have the right to drink clean water and not build walls around these man-made borders.
The right to not just survive, but thrive and live freely in our sovereign bodies.
But please separate your fact from fabrication. America is just a projection of our imagination onto sacred mountains and the holy earth.
So dear imaginary states of America, remember, this earth is the foremother of your forefathers.
She existed before money.
She existed before America.
So please, don't call me American.
Don't call me Native American. I am human.
Can you see me?
Can you see us when you sing?
Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave?
This land is not America.
She will tell you her true name.
As the nighthawks dive at twilight,
as the wolves howl at moonlight,
as the waterfalls rage cascading,
as the avalanches fracture breaking,
she will tell us her true name
with earthquakes that split states and break fences to remind us
she does not belong to us. We belong to her.
Come and get your free land, free squaws.
Grandson, Let me tell you a story about what it was like to be an Indian in the South. Long time ago, I met the last surviving Rappahannock who went to jail for the right to call himself a Rappahannock Indian. His name was Purcell Bird. The way he told it. A group of Rappahannock men went to report for induction into the United States Army during World War II. Man said, well, there's a white bus and there's a colored bus. Rappahannock men said, well, thank you very much, sir. We're waiting for the Indian bus.
How long did he wait for the Indian bus?
Indian bus never came. They were arrested, tried, convicted, classified as conscientious objectors, and went to jail.
All for the right to call themselves Virginia Indians?
Mm-hmm.
Grandma, tell me a scary story.
Oh, scarier than that one? Once there was an evil old white supremacist. His name was Plecker, Walter A. He was an old country doctor who was the head honcho at the Virginia Bureau of Vital Statistics from 1912 to 1946. You heard me.
From 1912 to 1946.
And he was responsible for establishing the Racial Integrity Act.
The Racial Integrity Act?
It's an act.
It's an act.
It's an act with a capital A for act.
Which rhymes with fact.
That is the fact that the act
Stinks.
And this act included a rule.
A rule?
And the rule said that any person with one drop, I said one drop, of Negro blood was therefore colored.
Rule.
So there were whites. And there were coloreds. No Indians. And that's called
the one-drop rule.
That's right. And Plecker made it his life's mission to buy up or destroy any birth certificate that identified the bearer as Indian, and that's
paper genocide. But isn't there an exception, Grandma, for all those white people and their Indian princess grandmas?
Oh, there sure enough is. It's called the Pocahontas exception.
An exception for Pocahontas?
Well, an exception for all of her so-called descendants.
What does that mean?
It means that any person of the Caucasian persuasion in possession of less than 1/16 Indian blood could stay white. White.
Well, how about that?
White. Plecker.
He's a mother Plecker.
And to this very day, we are still haunted by Pocahontas and the Racial Integrity Act.
Pokey haunts us, 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 pokey haunts us.
The Mississippi and Missouri rivers are the main arteries that run through our mother's heartland, from Sky Woman to Earth Mother. Her waterways carry our blood memory, the veins of our indigenous family tree lines that run north to south, of one land, foundation free. Under your man-made borders divide that cuts and severs our mother's nation's lifeline, side to side.
We never lost our power.
They stripped and stole our authority. Just like now, Grandma.
We have to feed our power, not the defeat.
When they came, the first thing they saw were strong, naked men and women. Some of the men dressed like women. Some of the women behaved like men.
All these women and grandmas were the keepers of the land, family, clans, food crop, and government systems, and we had the last word.
The decision makers.
They saw faith keepers, midwives, healers, seers, and sacred clown societies that were highly revered.
But the youth and elders
We're the most precious resources of their world.
The quickest way to get land was to marry up our women and have sons to rule over the spreading patriarchy. In time, the people were reduced to whores, witches, perverts, crazy savages, trafficking children as slaves sent overseas to the Ivory Coast, to the Caribbean, Canary Islands, and Europe.
You see, no ship left any shore empty.
You mean the slave trade went both ways?
Oh, we had no value to them except dead or sold.
Many long wars and sickness broke out, decimating the people. The survivors scattered into the swamps and hills to escape the slavers. They had to sacrifice their language and identity as Tuscarora people, becoming the hidden strongholds of
Free people of color. Well, that's code for Indian, you know.
The key escorts to the North trade.
The Tuscarora Trail
became the Underground Railroad.
Once our great council of chiefs was broken, the settlers took free reign from north to south. Until this day, our southern Tuscarora identity is denied. The names of the faces have been silenced and erased from history's hidden recorded time and place. As we step back through our ancestors' paths, through the trees, the womb, the rivers, oceans, sacred fire, we find that the people in the land are one and the same, and that the spirit and the blood of our ancestors are within us, and we shall never, never die. I'm a going home, going home. North Carolina is crying in my soul. Where the Neuse River runs through a land where my great-grandmother sleeps. Under the earth, the blood of Skarduda nation was free. I hear Nigerian chains, they say are buried real deep. Tobacco fields, trail of tears, stolen people on stolen land. I'm a going home, going home. North Carolina is crying in my soul. Creator, I'm reaching out to you. Tell them on the other side that they are alive within my soul. Return their presence
my veins return the land and heal her pain, the hidden truth. Tell the world the blues where it comes from. I'm going home, going home. North Carolina is crying in my soul. Creator, I'm reaching out to you. Tell them that I
My grandmother would always tell me that the reason the vegetables taste so good in Mississippi is because we are part of the soil. Both my mama and my father's folks are from the Carolinas. Daddy's folks went north to Manhattan in search of life beyond the plantation, while mama's folks were driven further south into the land of the pristine magnolias and loblolly pines, the lands of the Choctaw, the Quapaw, the Natchez, and the Yazoo. Their charge was to birth the expansion of racial capitalism across the fertile southern soil. My mama's daddy's folks always lived in the land of the great river, Mississippi. Growing up, there was rumors of Big Mama being told to get back to the reservation, but they were only whispers. No quantum taken, no history of blood-bound kin. My mother, Genevia, is the eldest remaining keeper of the family story, and she can neither confirm nor deny tribal affiliation. Yeah, it's complicated. But she can't tell me what she don't know. And what I do know is when the colonizers count the free and the bound, they tend to miscalculate the lot in their own favor. Seems freedom is not as abundant as the cotton that needed picking. They tend to misplace deeds to land that they would rather keep for themselves and steal wages that they never intended to pay. They also tend to burn records and bodies they don't want to be found. What I don't know is the language my people spoke before we spoke English. My native tongue disappeared from my ancestors' lips soon after the land of East Africa was no longer visible from the ships sailing across the expanding sea. So I speak the language of the oppressor. Fluently, I might add. At least 8 generations of my ancestors rest in southern soil. This soil where our people's blood and flesh, sweat and tears, their lives are monuments to fatback blues and spiritual soul food. Now, this may not be the land of their ancestors, but it is the land of mine. This is home. It has always been home.
A short but critical race theory. Somewhere there's a man sweating and weeping in the South. The man's labor is an incomplete thought hanging in the mind of the master of the manor. As a matter of Southern manor, the master of the manor has a half memory of the laborer's humanity, leaves the thoughts hanging there like weeping cotton, like a supplicant under the lash with no option but to feel the wrath of a pirate obsessed with the theft of the weeping man's dignity. The master of the manor takes a perverse pleasure in luxury through torture. The laborer will tell you of the fabric that costumed it all, of a dead body as both dance and drum, of a neck new snapped, rhythmic impact, gone swaying in the wind, gong like a dilla kick against a tree trunk. In some version of American truth, cotton weeps power through the pores of a powder blue sky. Cotton is a hurricane swept through and then gone, swept in like a black life and then gone like a truth, gone with the wind of a dark American night. Cotton is a strange fruit, indeed. Breathtakingly animate as it is authored in the memory of Southern order, the methodology of American innovation and efficiency, the truths we tell or hide, and why a broken man would broker a hanging memory of an ancestral lie, and why wouldn't a Taino man provide some sanctuary to a starving seafarer about to die? The sky remembers us human. Decency is native to the South. Rebellious Igbo on Haiti, new black liberty on Taino soil. Taino truths, the roots in Nat Turner's mouth. But why be critical? Why theorize about race? Why not just stand still by the window, staring into the void, listening to the muffled sound of cotton as she weeps? The South remembers when we were free. Remembers when we trusted the stars, ventured into the darkness, by faith traveled to places we couldn't see. Freedom is native to the South. Sanctity of our bodies, sovereignty of our relatives. Remember when we trusted the stars? The feeling before paper promises and weeping cotton fields. The feeling of chanted Dex doctrines and sovereign prerogatives, whole human beings. Fragments of starlight, wading in water. Freedom can't wait any longer. Remember when we trusted stars? The feeling before paper promises and weeping cotton fields. Freedom can't wait any longer.
The South remembers the face of a tree. Who wants to stare at the blood on your knees? The South remembers the rivers of bleed. The stars remember whose land and whose relatives weep.
6 years before they forced us on the Trail of Tears, the Supreme Court affirmed our nation's inherent right to exist. The court could not have been more clear.
The Cherokee Nation, then, is a distinct community, occupying its own territory with boundaries accurately described, in which the laws of Georgia can have no force.
This is what Chief Justice Marshall declared, but Andrew Jackson refused to enforce it.
John Marshall made that decision. Let him enforce it.
This is what your president said to me.
Oh, they knew Georgia was violating the law.
But he did nothing. And what did Georgia do? Georgia outlawed our government. Their governor instructed the Georgia militia to rape our women.
And they did.
He told Georgia's citizens to ply us with alcohol.
And they did.
They burnt down our homes. They gave away our lands in the lottery. They terrorized us until all you could hear in the heart of Cherokee Nation were the screams of our women trying to escape the men sent to rape them.
But that's what they wanted.
They wanted us to leave.
Move west, or you will disappear.
This is what your president said to me. Your court that declares the law of the land affirmed our right to remain in our homes. Your highest court said we did not have to leave. Your court said they couldn't make us. But then your nation didn't think twice when they did. There were no protests in the streets.
Jackson was elected to a second term.
In 1832, Americans weren't concerned when their president decided he was above the law. My father and I, as well as my cousin and several other Cherokee leaders, became convinced that signing a treaty and moving west was the only way for our nation to survive. We would lose our homes, our lands, the graves of our ancestors, our beloved Gadua Mound, all of our sacred sites. But we would still have our nation, and we would be somewhere where they couldn't kill us. Or so I thought. On December 29th, 1835, I signed the Treaty of New Echota. And in that treaty, your government promised our nation what Chief Justice Marshall said was ours.
Jurisdiction over all Cherokee lands.
In exchange, we agreed to move. But my fellow citizens refused to leave. They simply could not fathom leaving
Our
behind
rivers.
our rivers,
Streams.
the creeks, the streams where we went to water and had ceremony. They could not leave behind our beloved mountains,
hills,
the hills that had embraced us since time immemorial.
graves of our ancestors.
For many of my people, death was preferable to leaving behind the homes Creator had given us.
Beloved Gadua Mound.
In May of 1838, President Martin Van Buren ordered the soldiers to remove us. They arrived in Cherokee Nation and shot anyone who refused to go. They rounded up our people and put them in concentration camps, where many died, never even making it to the trail. They raped our women repeatedly and killed our babies. Thousands died on what became known as the Cherokee Trail of Tears. On June 22nd, 1839, 7 of my fellow countrymen arrived at my home and pulled me out of my bed and dragged me to my front yard where, in front of my wife and 5 children, they stabbed me to death. For signing the treaty, for acquiescing to removal, I was considered a traitor. We may have lost our homes, our lands, thousands of our lives, but at Cherokee Nation today, we still have our sovereignty. That is something the state of Georgia and the United States can never take away.
South remembers rivers that bleed. Stars remember whose land and whose relatives we. South remembers the rivers that bleed. Oh, the stars remember whose land and whose relatives we.
There will be no place in memory for what we see. And then what? You with your words in the enemy language. Do you know how to make a peaceful road through human history? And what of angry ghosts of history? Exile of memory. We sing the children a path to find the way home. We loved our trees and waters and the creatures and earths and skies in that beloved place. We are still in mourning. The children were stolen from these beloved lands. Their hair was cut. They were bathed in pesticides, then lined up to sleep alone in their army-issued cages. Grief is killing us, anger tormenting us, sadness eating us with disease. Our young women stolen, raped, and murdered. Our young men killed by police. Exile of memory. Exile of memory. The old Muskogee laws outlawed the Christian religion because it divided the people. We, who are relatives of panther, raccoon, deer, and the other animals and winds, were soon divided. But Muskogee ways are to make relatives. We made a relative of Jesus and gave him a Muskogee name. We can hear our ancestors as we climbed up to the edge of destruction. In the dark, we felt their presence at the edge of our mind. And we heard them singing, exile of memory, exile of memory. We carried fire back to the council oak tree. We saw Mother Earth, Igana Java, in labor. There are no words in this trade language with enough power to hold all this we are becoming. Exile of memory. Exile of memory. We take our place beyond the break of history.
Our people are connected through honoring our ancestors, honoring our descendants, the survival of our culture and heritage.
Our people are connected by stories of enduring threats to our environment, culture, language, and existence.
One of these stories is of the Pueblo people, indigenous to the land that has become known as New Mexico.
The Pueblo people lived free and in harmony until the 1540 arrival of Spanish colonizers.
Over time, they tired of the Spanish brutality and enslavement.
The Pueblos, led by Pope of Okeawinke, secretly met and devised a plan.
On August 10th of 1680, they would unite and revolt.
The Pueblo villages were far apart.
Long-distance runners, each carried a yucca rope with knots.
The yucca knots were the countdown.
Each day, a knot was untied.
Warriors and their relatives ready.
Eagles carried their prayers for strength, courage, and protection.
The last knot was undone. The Pueblo Revolt of 1680 began.
Today, the Pueblo people remain,
carrying on the ways of their ancestors,
in the lands of their ancestors.
Our people throughout the world continue to survive. We celebrate our indigenous relations, many connected through tribal clan systems,
such as the Eagle Clan.
The Eagle Clan joins us by carrying our prayers to the highest heights of the sky, closest to the Creator.
The eagle, a sacred bird, connects all tribes from North America to South America.
The eagle is honored through dance and song.
The eagle spirit gives strength to the sacred circle, continuously interweaving our ancestors and descendants, together forever.
visitors. This is a story Santa Clara Pueblo remembers. I must have been about 8 years old. My grandmother, an incredibly strong-headed woman, was making pottery. And she would tap us on our heads with a cane and say, "You, go get that clay. You, go get that wood. You, go get the cow patty so we can start our fire."
This is a story the Silettes remember. The lady I learned to weave from weaved all her life. From when she was just 6, she wove through World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, the Civil Rights Movement. She chugged along, digging her roots, making her baskets.
This is a story the Tlingit remember. I come from a long line of Chilkat weavers. The river runs through our veins. In 1985, the last of our master weavers passed away. I had learned about the Jewish Holocaust and how a museum was healing generational trauma. I thought our people needed something tangible to deal with the intangible feelings.
My teacher was a different kind of teacher. I thought I knew how to do our braided double handles, and when I showed her, she laughed. And she kept laughing. She said, "What were you thinking? Let me show you." You know, things look so simple until someone actually shows you how to do it.
Our pots are for everyday life. So at a very early age, you're already introduced to the clay, or you're out digging.
She was a fluent speaker. To me, that's how you learn. You know what you're doing and what it means.
And then the railroad and buses came through, and the tourists. I brought in enough money for salt, sugar, and lard.
I thought, okay, I'm ready to tackle a robe, but not by myself. So the healing robe became a group project. It was very complex. The raven's tail design and the Chilkat, which is a higher level of understanding to weave in.
We children would stand there watching these Anglo people. And I remember this woman coming down off the bus. All I could see was her black pair of shoes and her white legs. Even now when I go to market, sometimes I think about those white legs and black shoes.
The United States said we didn't exist. They terminated the Silettes in 1954 and disrespected our treaties by taking all of our timber and jailing our people for hunting and fishing.
When you're a young child, clay is something you have to do. And when I got older, I said, I'm never going to do that. I stopped for 20 years.
The healing robe was a slow process. It took us 8 years to weave.
The government said, you all need to join your other American brothers and sisters and leave this failed reservation system.
But then I saw my neighbors bringing in money with their pottery, so I decided to try again.
When we had our healing robe ceremony, we talked about having our lands taken away, potlatch outlawed, our children sent away to boarding school, and their mouths washed out with soap for speaking Tlingit.
But what they didn't count on was our elders. They fought for 22 years until we were finally reinstated. Our rights could never be used against us. And through all of this, my teacher was still weaving.
When we brought the robe out to the community, one of our elders said it was a good thing what we were doing. Starting that robe marks the end of a long journey.
My neighbor saw me trying to make a pot and said, "You can't do that." Well, she's speaking to me in Tewa, saying, "You have to treat it with respect." And she meant I needed to pray. So that was another lesson I had to relearn.
I kept going back to her house for years. And she finally said, "What more can I teach you? You're there." And I was kind of upset at that at first, but then I realized she was saying, you need to move on with your own weaving.
You have neighbors, people in the village that will teach you. That's what's kept the Pueblos intact.
Weaving is our identity. The right to pick that hazel stick or dig that spruce is the same as killing elk or netting fish.
Sometimes you just have to start if the Spirit is inspiring you. You don't know where to start, but just start. Start somehow. And it is like you are unplugging something, and then it will flow.
I had to learn to feel the clay.
My teacher never stopped weaving. To me, this little unassuming lady following her heart represents the bigger fight for the rights of tribes.
You take a great big breath and say hallelujah. This is the world that I live in. The sun rises and you say good morning to the sun. You see it set and you say, this has been a good day. And thank the spirits for the time in between.
Something that can seem so simple and small can be so tremendously large.
Our healing robe is here to remember our ancestors. It's here to collect your tears, to dry your tears, and to know that you are not alone.
This is a story. The rivers of the north, remember.
According to Indigenous prophecies, we may be in the time of the seventh fire. The seventh fire signifies a time when a new people will emerge. These new people will lift us up towards peace and harmony, or continue the path to disharmony and destruction. 50 million Indigenous people inhabited North, Central, and South America prior to contact. Today, a few million of us remain. There can be no doubt we are at a crossroads. In this time of the seventh fire, We must move towards peace and harmony in order for the eighth fire to occur. So, I invite you to walk with me in ceremony along the waterways. Let every step be a prayer. If you cannot walk with me, then I invite you to make an offering every day to the water, to the land, to all that there is. In this time of the seventh fire, reparations must be made in order for the eighth fire to be lit. Oh, what name? Oh, what name? Oh, what name? Kiokine, Kiokine. Oh, what name? Oh, what name? Oh, what name? Kiokine, Kiokine.
In the beginning, before the beginning, a single thought rang out. It was this thought that created Ishpaming, the universe. As each of the planets settled into the heavens, they each gave something of themselves. It was this alchemy that created Madewabu, the most sacred water of all.
The rivers of the north remember from whence they came, and they remember to flow, flow, flow to the ocean.
Josephine Menominee, the grandmother who began the water walks by walking around Lake Superior and all 5 of the Great Lakes, knew that water was a living entity. She knew that water had to move in order to be healthy. She wanted the water to know that there were still human beings who loved and cared for the water. Water is life. At conception, we are 98% water. At birth, we are 78% water. As adults, we are 60% water. Water is life. Drink water.
Deborah White Plumiban, fearless advocate of the water, told us, for us, water is sacred. Lakota people are born into the womb of the water in this world, arriving from the star nation. When a newborn is born, the water is placed into the baby's mouth. In the Lakota way, we protect our people, and that is exactly what she did.
LaDonna Brave Bull Allerdyban. She was the founder of Sacred Stone Camp at Standing Rock. She was concerned not only for the environment, But I also remember she said, the abuse of women is well known in history and tells you a lot about what is happening on our earth. As long as we continue to rape the earth, the rape of women will continue.
Malinali Maria Soto Iban, Mexica Dan Santa, who rediscovered the Danza de la Luna, the dance of the moon. Malinali was a sun dancer and also led the Danza de la Luna. She loved her people fiercely. I watched as she spoke to the thunder and the lightning as it approached our ceremonial grounds atop of a high hill. As they came closer, the clouds parted and went around us. These were the same clouds that touched down a tornado 50 miles south of us. She was a tiny but powerful dansanta who cared for the people north and south of the border.
We remember our mothers, daughters, and aunties who have all gone missing. There are over 5,000 missing and murdered Indigenous women in North America. We wish for their return. We wish for an end to violence.
My niece was found shot in the heart. They ruled it suicide. What woman goes to bed and shoots herself in the heart? Her boyfriend collected guns and was abusive. We know he did it.
My mom and dad had an argument on Christmas Eve. She went outside to cool off, go for a walk. She never returned. Now, we don't celebrate Christmas anymore, but I still put out a plate of food for her spirit. My dad blames himself. We don't talk about her. The hardest part is not knowing where she is or what happened to her.
My sister left for a basketball game. She didn't come back. I will never, ever stop looking for her. Not until I find her.
Do not forget about the children. In 2019, we visited Carlisle Boarding School and seen over 200 graves of children that never made it home. We took our asema and we put it on those little gravestones, all in rows with names etched on them. One of those children was a relative of LaDonna Brave Bull Allard. The children are now coming home.
There are many names for grief we carry.
Ambiguous grief.
We carry sudden traumatic death grief.
Collective grief.
Intergenerational grief.
Someone we love is gone.
Intergenerational
Sometimes that gone
Collective grief.
is disappearing.
Intergenerational grief.
Sometimes that gone
Intergenerational
is death.
grief.
Collective grief.
Taken,
Intergenerational
displaced,
grief.
removed,
Intergenerational grief.
Collective grief.
disappeared.
Intergenerational grief.
Words that
Collective
in the
grief.
midst of grief
Intergenerational
have no
grief.
meaning.
Collective grief.
There's only the
Intergenerational
feeling of
grief.
hollowness, rage,
Collective
and sorrow that consume the soul. And the shadow of that loss lingers long after those waves of feeling subside.
True warrior, in God's
as I offer my prayers for my grandchildren and all the grandchildren of my heart, I send love to the great-great-grandchildren of the future. I wonder, what will their lives be like? Will they be water protectors? What hereditary traits will they carry on? Will they be musicians and artists?
Will our great-great-grandchildren live in a peaceful and just world? Will the blood of the Ojibwe, the Dakota, the Tuscarora, the Mexica still flow through their veins? Will their DNA carry the love of our songs, our ceremonies, our water, and our land?
First peoples of Turtle Island, rise up. First peoples of Turtle Island, rise up. Be grateful for what you've been given. The earth, the sky, the water, the flowers, and the rainbows too. First peoples of Turtle Island, rise up. First people of Turtle Island, rise up. Take care of each other, the elders, the babies, the women, the brothers and the sisters too.
First people of Turtle Island, rise up!
Rise up.
First people of Turtle Island, rise up! Do justice to what you've been given. The earth, the air, the plants, the animals, Nimamaki, and the water too. Respect it. Love it.
Rise up.
First people of Turtle Island, rise up.
Rise up.
First people of Turtle Island, rise up.
Take care of
Rise
each
up.
other.
Rise up. Rise up.
Rise up.
Take care of each other.
Rise up.
Respect each other. Have compassion for each other. And for others too. All people of Turtle Island, rise up. All people of Turtle Island, rise up. Take care of what's been given. Honor it. Respect it. Love it. The earth, the air, and the Nibi too.
All people of Turtle Island, rise up! All people of Turtle Island, rise up! Nurture all beings with love, compassion, and justice too.
Rise up, rise up, rise up.
Mauna Kea, I end up where I began.
papa hana o moku.
Hana o Hawaii he motu, hana o Maui he motu.
Ho I ho o a ke anoho ia ho o hoku kalani.
Hana o Molokai he motu, hana o Lana I Kaula he motu.
Lili o pupuna lua o papa ia ho o hoku kalani ho I ho o papa noho ia wa kea.
Hana o Ahu he motu, hana o Kauai he motu, hana o Ni'ihau he motu, he ula o ka ho'olawe.
Ask me about the Mauna, and I will tell you about 30 Kanaka huddled shivering in an empty parking lot, praying that Lahui would answer the call. I will tell you about 2 nights hot sleeping directly under a sky scattered with stars, in air so clear every inhale is medicine. How every morning I woke to a Lahui Kanaka growing as if we were watching Maui fish us one by one from the sea. Ask me, and I will tell you how on the 3rd morning, I watched as 30 became 100, then 100 became 1,000, then 1,000 became us all.
Each and every one of our kupuna standing beside us.
Ku kapuno hulai ka moana, hele ka ehu kai uhi ka aina. O lapa ka uila noho I tahiti, uina na kolo ua tapi e. Lau kanaka ka hula, e la ka e. Te atua ualo I tala I e. E avale na I una bua auru nui. Te atua pe e I talau ki ele. O matua I tuile, I tui no oe. A ele no mato ai. O poli ahu I te tualo no Mauna Kea. No ana I tawa o te tuahiri. Wahine no anu o ka olihu e. E tu ana I luna o te ki e. O ano vale ana I pali uli e. Aloha mai a ukalehu a Itali u. O na hoa o uo ke kai he e nalu. Ia aina tula I tau alule hua. Aina hola ina kupane I e. Aloha tuku aina o punalai. O poli ahu I te tualo no Mauna Kea. No ana I tawa o te tuahiri. Wahine no anu o ka olihu e. E tu ana I luna o te ki e. O ano vale ana I pali uli e. Aloha mai a ukalehu a Itali u. O na hoa o uo ke kai he e nalu. Ia aina tula I kau alule hua. Aina hola ina kupane I e. Aloha tuku aina o punalai.
And the kukua who sat beside us, how we were never alone in the malu of the Mauna, how no one is ever alone in the malu of our Mauna. Ask me, and I will recount their names. All 38 of kupuna who showed us mo'opuna how to stand, how I wept and wept and wept as I quietly held their names in my chest. Ask me, and I will sing the song of our manawahine, linked arms and unafraid, who stood in the face of a promise of sound cannons and mace. Ask me, and I will tell you. I have been transformed here, but I won't have the words to quite explain. I will say, I don't know exactly who I will be when this ends. I don't know exactly who we will be when this ends, but at the very least I'll know that this Aina did everything it could to feed me. That will be enough to keep me standing.
Nakia i Mauna Kea. Ua lava i ka nei o ka laukoa. I pauku i la mai me ke I mai no e hui lokahi. Ua maluhi la o pulu. Na hulu kupuna na fivo Holi, holi, na mele alohaina. He aloha whaakelu ana nehi. I ka na manu ua malia. E huli a mai e nā pua. I lei o kahi o ka lanakila. Haina ka puana ua kaulana. Nā puai hau kila moi I ke ala. Haina ka puana ua kaulana. Nā puai hau kila moi I ke ala. Nā puai hau kila moi ke
And yet I still have aloha, but only because I am still here, with all my kupuna beside me. So when I stand in your malu, you tower over me like a recollection, like a mountain, with so many stories I will never know, in languages I will never speak, thousands of miles away from your home, and the aina and alchemy that made you, the hands that formed you like an island consecrated. You are here, pointed even in the wrong direction, a desecration, and still, your kaumaha, it is not foreign to me. you feel more family than stranger, because in your magnificent shadow, I hear our calls to prayer.
In this land, you can see every star. The Milky Way shines brightly against prairies. When we look up, we see our ancestors. Remember the stories of the 7 sisters. Star Boy shining down on us. We follow the stars across Kesapa, the Black Hills, when it's time to pray each season to give thanks for our human journey here on Unchi Maka. The earth and stars are central to Lakota star knowledge. They are the same because what is on the earth is in the stars, and what is in the stars is mirrored on the earth. We can see that the entire constellation of stars encircles the entire Black Hills, the heart of everything that is. The stellar world engenders, and the earth reflects all the stages. When people cross over, we know that they're still with us, and we know that they travel to the stars, and that they're going to see our ancestors. Our spirit stays alive in the stars. We have roots in the stars, and we still carry some remains of our star origins in our bodies. What is on the earth is in the stars, and what is in the stars is on the earth. They are the same.
So, Kato Manowich Kikatu. There was an astronaut going up into space, and he looked down upon Koko Masakamakano, our grandmother Earth. And he saw this beautiful green jewel. So he radioed NASA, and they told him that beautiful green jewel is the forest of the Menominee Nation. This is our story, the land remembers. This is our story, we won't forget. Earth, sky, and water, we won't surrender. This is our way, the healing way. Our reservation is over 95% wild forest, ancestral homelands that we've preserved, but not without struggle. And the ma'o, our sacred sturgeon, provided food after long, hungry winters, until 2 dams were placed just south of our reservation. In order to establish an economic base, we created a sustainable logging practice so our forests would go on forever. Oh, remember, we are defenders of this land, of this way. Our ancestors keep us centered, spirits guide. In 1954, Congress passed the Termination Act for the Menominee, Siletz, and Klamath tribes, rescinding our treaty rights and creating severe economic hardship. Ada Deer, Jim Washenawatuk, and so many of the others fought to restore our rights as Menominee people and protect our sacred homeland. And in 1973, we were restored as the Menominee Nation through our resilience. Tanaway Makanuk, and that.
would we say if natives held Supreme Courts every day? Who'd be on the stand now? Tell me who'd be free when there's thousands locked down looking just like me. Hey, this is the story that the land remembers. They stand for bands that won't withstand the weather. Laws of nature quick to put us in the ban. The settler packaging bags are dead, but ask the teller who charged the cause of freedom for a generational rise. Who divides the dead deeper than an ocean and sky? Hurt the lives, disperse them wide to reinsert their pride. But all in all, you see it all indigenized, different minds. After decades worth of distant minds, prove you can't erase the history or trick a rise. But even if you burned every acre and dropped tears on your Burberry blazer, the earth remembers. Who stayed in the lane, the water remembers. Even if you douse it in flames, the trees remember. Gave you all that breath anyway, my body remembers. I carry all my scars just the same, it's part of my way. Give thanks and pray to the day, till the spirits on the other side to save me a play. I'm not insane, my ways do not belong in a grave. I say all of my relations because I am the same. Same as the waves in the plant. I'm the same. Same as the ants in the grass. I'm the same. Come on, yeah, I know that this is a rap, but I'm the same. While this feels like a traditional dance, I keep stepping, being blessed. They're trying to kill us off. Don't let them, no deep message. The history is too plain. Alaska to Hawaii, all the way to Great Plains, it's all the same. So what would we say if natives held Supreme Courts every day? Who'd be on the stand now? Who'd be free when there's thousands locked down looking just like me? Hey, this is the story that the land remembers. Land remembers. Land remembers.
That's right.
This is the story that the land remembers. Land remembers.
Big poet! Don't be nice! Get mean!
This is the story. The land remembers, low rumbling, the ground crumbling, bleach, yeah. Relatives stumbling, children's laughter converts unwillingly to screams. The iron horse transferring aghast takujas to concentration camps you called residential schools, watching as they freeze, attempting to return home. Keamaha cradles our indigenous children, beaten, tortured, and killed. From churches built on the rib cages of toddlers, trees weep as they burn alongside our babies. The trees remember observing flesh offerings for Wakatanka during Sundance transform into genocide. Dancing relatives turn into fallen warriors. They watched as buried evidence escalated. Now we excavate small bones, discover dirt-filled baby moccasins, 6,509 and rising, and you still revise our history, colonize our trauma, sculpt it into your own comfortable shape. You scream these melodies of white supremacy, get over it and go back to where you came from, spat into the faces of the First Nations. You plague children's minds with lies while you preach in churches praying to your whitewashed God. A facade of willing migration when really 60,000 of us died because of your Indian Removal Act. Our trail of tears. I need you to know we are not your Indians. We are nations.
Oglala Lakota.
Ocheti Shakoi. Squawk, Shanu.
Ipai Kumiai.
Singit.
Kuna and Rappahannock.
Our blood stains the soils and rocks of the Paha Sapa Namahoshicha. The trees still weep with our elders after they watch relatives brutally hang, shot in cold blood, babies freezing in ditches from winter snow. We will never forget the Wounded Knee Massacre or Dakota 38. Our scalps, your trophies, our braids cut to disconnect our nahi, a spiritual genocide. Like a skinwalker, anemic limbs and bloodthirsty desires, attempts to replicate us. You lie, manipulate your voice when you throw us in unmarked graves, bury us with your delusions and guilt.
You wear our culture as if it's costume. Remove clothing as easily as you discard our generational trauma. You wear our identity like a memento. Fabricate our history if it makes you sleep better. We are Native Americans. We are Indigenous peoples. We are the First Nations. Our existence is our resistance.
That's right! You killed it! That's how you kill it right there! That's how you do it right there! It's your turn though! It's your turn though! It's your turn though! Bring that wisdom, bring that truth. It's your turn.
This is a story about land that tells me of my existence. This is a story about love. Our Lakota creation story tells us that in the beginning, there was nothingness.
Darkness. There was only Iyang.
Our word for rock.
Iyang was gigantic and alive. Iyang was breathing, full of life and blood and full of love. Through that love, Iyang decided to sacrifice its life to create life.
And so Iyang created the earth, the sky, the stars, and the water. And then earth said to rock, I am cold. Can you create beings that will take care of me, protect me, and keep me warm?
Iyang said to earth, if I give the last of my life and my blood to create these beings for you, then you must return that relationship, earth. You must provide for them, protect them, keep them safe and warm.
Earth agreed, and Iyang sacrificed the last of its life and the last of its blood to create plants, animals, and human beings. All of creation came to be.
And after Iyang shriveled up, hardened, and died, then shattered and fell to earth.
These are all the rocks and stones we see today.
That is why we say, Metakuyanse.
We are all related.
Through this relationship rooted in love, all of creation is forever connected.
This is a story the land remembers.
This is a story for us to remember. I remember this love buried deep within myself.
Growing out like roots.
Calling out to be heard.
Calling out to the land.
Calling out to the people.
Calling out to myself.
I come back to the land.
I come back to the people.
I come back to myself.
We come back to each other.
This is the story.
This is the story.
This is the story.
The land remembers singing to the beats of drums. Keamaha only knows of laughter and vibrant orange sunsets gleaming off brown eyes, bare skin kissed by rainfall. Ceremonial songs and braids long enough to kiss Unshi Macha, bouncing in the wind from gyrating relatives, quilled moccasins memorizing each breathtaking movement. Now we stay and protect what is left.
Remember? Remember the sweet songs of crickets and birds. Lakota, Wagogapi. They speak Lakota here. Remember the red clay walls and the mullein that grows from the ia, the sage as tall as our knees, the gentle buzz and the sun beating down. Tatanka, making their way back to the reservation, Matho returning to Hesapatu. Our children are speaking Lakota with our grandparents. Like our relatives, we are returning, standing, grounded to the earth, feet pressed to the surface like a string lifting through the top of my head. The air is full and breath goes through me. Easy. When our ancestors said Blihichi Yaye, only they knew how much struggle there would be because they lived through it. 1,000 times worse for the same thing, our land, our water, our lives. It feels like putting our bodies on the line to protect everything sacred. Tashuke Wiko said, every day is a good day to die. Will you give up everything so everyone south of the rivers can have access to clean water? Chain your bodies to the machines and pray it will stop the black snake beneath her skin. Menominee, Pasi, the wild rice tastes like the rivers and lakes it comes from. Will you stop it from tasting like oil? The land will remember. Now we stay and protect what is left.
We are listening.
Kayamaka sings to the beats of drums, warmth sent from we. Unshimaka, you are earthly green, plants rising up concrete resiliency, burning red, raging passion. You are alive.
We are alive.
We are alive. Now we stay and protect what is left. Tomhula. Her power resonates under barefooted souls that stand rooted as life springs from words spoken. Sunlight extends veins of life flowing as barrels turn behind gently closed eyelids. And then I see her. A dark-skinned beauty dancing through the windows of my soul. As she still holds space for healing and seasons for growth. And as each flower opens its face to the sun-kissed skies above, I can still hear her symphony fading quietly off into the distance. She travels through beautiful circles of infinite horizons, echoing sweet, sweet melodies across seas and seas of meadows. A voice born from newly opened petals of life. For I hear her whisper, Puti Kuala.
We are still here.
That's right, we're still here. I want to hear some noise from the Kennedy Center right now. Let's get it up right now. Let's give it up for Miss Chief Rocco. Let's go. That's right, don't stop. Yeah. Yeah.
We are a story fed by generations. We carry songs of grief, loss, triumph, and joy. Feel their power as they ascend within us, as we walk, run, then fly to infinite possibilities. Let go that which has disturbed your soul. Let go any acts of unkindness or brutality. Let go that which has burdened your family, your community, your nation. Let go one breath into another. Listen now as earth sheds her skin. Listen as the generations move one against the other. We are bringing in a new story. We will be accompanied by ancient and new songs, and we will celebrate together.